Boom live. Hello, YouTube. Hello, world. The wide world of... Oh, Nick just disappeared.
Quick ad break.
Quick ad break. Nick, you do have a blue haze over you. Did you put a filter on your... Is this a Instagram filter?
Did it? Hang on.
Doesn't he look blue?
Is that better?
Are you a cat?
It's this stupid software. Sorry.
I thought it looked all right. It's kind of sci-fi.
Yeah. Feel free to put it back on. Matt preferred it.
I'd like to be a bit blue. Here in my country, that means rude. If you say like a bit, it's a bit blue. It means it's like
here
a
it
bit
means
rude.
you're down in the dumps, like you're
Oh
depressed.
yeah.
You're sad.
We have that too.
Although blue comedy is kind of like crass comedy, right?
Oh, that's it. Yeah, that's the one I mean.
Okay.
Oh, that is cool. You don't need any hue lamps or any of those IoT lamps when you've got those filters.
Exactly.
Save a lot of money.
Where you
Actually, just get some glasses that are just get glasses that are tinted if you save money on the
Right.
devices, because they do get pricey.
Oh yeah.
Instagram
it's just a
filter
little-
glasses are the new thing, right?
Does
Like
that count as
add
AR?
filters to whatever you're seeing?
You just sellotape a little cat there.
Didn't Snapchat have? Well, no, they were just for snapping pictures creepily of people.
Oh,
right?
right. Just on your glasses. It's like Austin Powers. He can zoom in on his glasses, if you remember that film.
It's been a while.
Yeah, you should rewatch them, mate. It's really it stand the test of time. They're really good.
Those were some of my favorites of all time.
Yeah.
I wish
I think
he was still around. I mean,
Yeah,
maybe
he
he's still
was.
around, but I don't know what he's doing.
he was in a Super Bowl commercial for Wayne's World.
Right.
Not that I watch Super Bowl commercials or Super Bowl.
You just watch the commercials on YouTube?
I don't know. You scroll by things, you see it.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to like, you don't want people to think you're too cool, don't you? I can tell. Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
people start
In case
asking
you
me
thought
about
I
football,
liked
and I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, no, you're in too deep. I get that a lot when I visit the US, because sometimes there are people that love like British soccer, and they're so disappointed when I have to just tell them I'm a programmer. I can just see the disappointment in their face.
You mean you don't follow the Champions League and everything going on?
Even though it was called that. Champions League. Big-headed, isn't it?
Big-headed.
With the champions. Well, yeah.
That sounds like me being someone who doesn't watch football but lives in Nebraska. Where
Right. Yeah.
Where there's literally nothing else to do.
right.
You just
we
went
go out to
8-bit.
eat.
Sorry.
Matt, if you're going to be on our show, you have to, let the rest of us have a chance at jokes.
Yeah, there's just a delay, that's all. And that's my time to strike. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where I'll be.
I
I'll be
remember
in
somebody who told me who went to university in the Midwest. I think it was Iowa or something. And he said, you have to understand why people in the Midwest drink so much. It's because when you're there, you don't want to be there. And you think, what's the emblem that reminds me that I'm there? Well, for much of the Midwest, it's a cornfield. So you look outside and you see a cornfield and you're like, shit, still in the Midwest. So you want to drink until you can't recognize a cornfield. But turns out a cornfield is a pretty basic object, right? It's like, fields of yellow and green.
Yeah.
So, you take a drink, look outside. Damn it, still looks like a cornfield. Before you know it, you're binge drinking.
Yeah. It can happen. I like that
It'll
joke.
turn into a field.
Joke
of
was
green.
corny.
It was a bit corny.
I was waiting for the punchline. There wasn't. It was good, but there was no moment.
Oh,
Because it's not my joke.
It's not my joke.
I'm just relaying it. It
Yeah.
came in that way. Didn't have a
That's-
function.
That's
like when
also
you
my
have
excuse for
Yeah.
all my things I'm going to say on this. It's not mine.
That's like when you have a supply chain, attack on your software, and you're like, well, that's not my dependency. That's somebody else's code. Just
I think that's your story of the week. I was looking at that too.
do that one. That's not
No.
my story. No.
Jared, my t-shirt did arrive in the end.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Love it.
You used
What's
to have
that
a different.
saying? No, is that a Go Time logo under there? No Go Time.
No, it used to be it used to have a different. It's a tiny Rick, but it's
Okay.
really faded.
I don't know who Tiny Rick is.
But you could fix this in post, can't you?
Yeah, we'll probably just black out just your entire screen in
Oh, great.
post.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to lose our viewership.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough.
Well, we should do a show, shall we? Let's do a clapper real quick because we've all been recording for a while, and I'd like to know. I would like
My
to not spend
audacity.
forever
I have
syncing
not
this.
turned on my local. Let me do that.
Oh, all right. Good thing I
Snap.
mentioned it.
Indeed. Okay, local is on.
Ooh, Thomas Eckert says this is from funk to function. Because he knows
Yeah.
go.
Oh,
Get it?
Spanning
No,
worlds.
I don't get it.
I don't get it.
I'm sad that I do. Are you recording, K-Ball?
I'm recording. Yeah.
Okay. All right. It'll be 1, 2, 3, and clap. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Boom. Goes the dynamite. By the way, if you are watching on YouTube and you're wondering, where's the chat? Why can't I chat? I'd like to make some chats. We turn off the YouTube chat because we hang out in the JS Party channel of changelogs Slack. So that's where the chatter happens. It's totally free. Just head to changelog.com/community, pop your email address in, sign up there, get your Slack invite, hop in there. That's the fun place to hang. So we just like to have all the chat in one place versus multiple places. So apologize if you're a YouTube commentator. Hop in our chat. There's fun times in there. Okay. Any questions on what's about to happen, gentlemen?
Let's go.
Let's.
Time.
No, too soon. What's up, Steve? Good to have you. It's always too
Steve.
soon. All right.
Nick, let's not go there.
Have you heard these before? Stop us if you've heard these. We'll go home.
Is this an ambush?
That was the $sign home because it was.
Computers. Clever. Yeah.
Because computers.
No, really good. Really
That should
good
be the
work. Good-
episode title.
That's really
Because
good humor.
computers.
Yeah.
You know it's good humor when he has to explain it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna start this music so you guys.
You know it's
Got
good
my
humor
back.
when you need to read the docs for it.
Be quiet now because the song started. Oh, yes, friends. You know, with the sound of those Breakmaster cylinder beats, that it is party time once again. I'm Jared. I'm your internet friend, and I'm joined by a few of my friends. Nick Nisi is here. What is up, Nick?
Hoi hoi.
Ahoy hoy to you. And we're also joined by K-Ball. What's up, K-Ball?
Hello. I am currently an internet friend, but hopefully someday we'll go back to being friends in person. One day
One
we'll
of
be
these-
able to travel.
Someday, one of these days, we'll visit all 5 continents together and do JS parties on all 5 continents. Fact check, false. We are also joined by an imposter from our sister program over there. He's a gopher, but he secretly likes JavaScript. Shh, don't tell the Go Time listeners. It's Matt Ryer. What's up, Matt?
Hello. And we're more of internet acquaintances, aren't we, Jared?
Yeah, let's keep it formal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Boundaries.
boundaries are good.
Yeah.
And someday, hopefully, we won't become real friends.
Okay. That's a brutal way to find out, but no, it's fine.
You may know Matt from a past episode of JS Party. Matt is actually a Svelte user and came on to talk about how they're using Svelte on paste.dev. So he does have a reason to be here. He's not just a gopher. He does like the web and JavaScript. So there you go. Happy to have you, Matt. And today we are going to do a few things, maybe even 4 things, which is we are going to do our recurring segment story of the week. We are going to do TIL, Today I Learned. We're also going to sneak in, if we have time, an unpopular opinion segment. And then finally, again, if we have time, shout outs to people doing cool stuff in the industry. So, let's do story of the week, shall we? So this is a fun game we play where everybody takes turns sharing what they believe is the most important or the biggest or the most interesting, or at least the one that they could find, story of the week. And we discuss. Now, we like to have jingles for our segments. And you may remember that Nick came up with this excellent jingle for Pro Tip Time.
Tip time.
So
Brilliant.
we do not have a story of the week jingle. And what you may not know is that Matt Ryer is actually very musically inclined. He plays the guitar. If you're watching live, you can see some guitars back there. He sings songs. He writes songs. And so, Matt, if I might just really put you on the spot and challenge you, can you please come up for us a story of the week jingle live on the spot without any rehearsal? We'd appreciate that.
But it really is no rehearsal because you're saying it like we've planned this.
I know, but that's what I was trying to set you up for.
Story of the week.
Yourself. Yeah, story of the week.
Right. Okay, ready? It's time to take a peek. It's time for the story of the week.
Damn.
Yeah,
That's actually better than I was expecting, dude. Nice job.
Way to play my jingle first, just to give the opposite of that.
Well, we wanted to lower the bar and make sure there wasn't too much of expectation. And that was actually completely ad hoc. Matt did not know about that. So nice
The
job,
first
Matt.
of many surprises that we're going to spring on him today.
That's right.
This does feel increasingly like an ambush.
Well, you are our guest, and we like to ambush our guests. No, we like to treat them. So please lead us off as your guest. The very first story of the week. Matt, what'd you bring?
Well, I found this very interesting story about Citibank, who, due to bad UI design, accidentally sent out $500 million. So, yeah, apparently there was a form in this very complicated old bit of software, and it's not very clear when you look at it what you should do. And I guess there's no confirmation. And so somebody accidentally paid out, they had loans that they owed, and they accidentally just paid off all the loans to the tune of around $500 million. And apparently in New York, according to New York law, if you make a wire transfer by mistake, then you have to pay it back, unless it's to pay off a debt. And that was this case. So there's the judge found against Citibank. So it's ongoing, the case. But there you go, seeing the importance of good UI design. I think it's vital, and this just highlights that. I mean, your websites might not lose $500 million, but it still can be annoying.
I saw some screenshots of this UI that had, a form with approximately 30 checkboxes close next to each other. Right next to each other was pay the interest versus pay the principal. And then apparently they do have a confirmation, but it doesn't say anything about what it's confirming. Just, you're going to send some money somewhere. Do you want to do it?
Yeah.
Wow.
I like optimistic UIs. If the operation's easy to undo, then I like to be able to just click it, like delete. I like to be able to click delete and it's gone. And then if that was a mistake, I can undo it. But when you're sending out, $500 million,
It's pretty optimistic.
You want, you want slightly better confirmation, don't you?
So whose fault was this? I mean, is there any insight onto, the process that created this, the systems in place, or was it just kind of like ongoing story?
Well,
it's easy to just blame like the designer or the developer, right? But surely like there's systemic failures that allow these things to go out, right?
It'll definitely be the fault of the project manager, won't it? We would never blame the developers, of course. But no, and actually it went through like 3 people had to confirm it because it's such a big number that they're dealing with. And they all, just by looking at the UI, they all inferred the wrong thing. They all assumed the wrong thing. And it was apparently a very reasonable thing to assume as well when you look at what they put. So I don't know whose fault. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if we have to blame, do we? Yeah, we do. It's $500 million.
That's right. Someone's got to pay for that.
Someone's got to be fired, haven't they?
Pretty much.
I wonder if you could, like, as the developer of that program, if you could like work knowing that loophole exists, develop towards that loophole. what are they going to do? Fire you? You're $500 million richer. So,
Like a salami attack, but in a UI salami.
Hmm.
It worked on Office Space, didn't it? I mean, he ended up on a beach somewhere with a bunch of money, and
Yeah, and Gus Gorman from Superman 3 was also able to, it wasn't a UI thing, but he was able to scrape the pennies, wasn't he? And got himself a lovely little sports car, if I remember correctly.
I only know of that reference through Office Space.
Oh, really? Oh,
Recently ran into a similar kind of issue. My dad was trying to get signed up for his COVID vaccine, and he had recently had a shingles vaccine. And there has to be some sort of gap between when you have one and the other. And whoever the programmer was had developed it so not only could you not schedule within that gap, or sorry, not schedule an appointment within that gap, you couldn't even do the scheduling within that gap. So he had to wait till the shingles gap was over to get in line for the COVID vaccine. Brilliantly stupid.
It's funny when you think of tech that's working in such important areas, and then like little mistakes like that, which are very easy to make, aren't they? When you're a programmer, or even just a dev team, when you say you can't schedule this in this time, I would probably think that was probably an easy fix that they did at the time, and it just turns out that's the importance of testing, isn't it? I suppose you should really test your bits.
Also knowing kind of the app as a whole, or the purpose of what you're trying to do as a whole, because like when you dive down into those micro requirements, like it all makes sense, but then when you start combining them together, then it just kind of goes awry, because it may not fit with either the actual goal that you're trying to do or how people will actually use it, because when they're all put together, nobody really thought about how things will go. It kind of reminds me of a similar story with either Venmo or like Cash App, and like sending money and requesting money look the same in the UI. So people would just be like requesting money, and people who got those requests for like $500 would be like, oh, somebody's sending me $500, and they were actually sending them $500 or whatever. Bad design.
It reminds me of the original Ethereum blockchain, which was pure insofar as it was immutable. You could never make a change to it, and that was part of the system. Like the code is the contract was kind of the motto, and that was all well and good until they got hacked, and I can't remember the exact details of how somebody made off with millions of dollars in cryptocurrencies, and the entire Ethereum ecosystem. Actually, they divided in half over this. That's why there's Ethereum Classic, and then like the one now. They basically decided like that whole immutable code is the contract thing. Yeah, let's throw that out and fix this bug.
There's so many things like that in the crypto space where it's like we can replace everything with the assumption that once it's in code, it's infallible. Forgetting that, no, wait, actually humans have to write that code.
Right.
Humans create bugs.
Right. What we do is we make our bugs immutable as we put them into an immutable system. So yeah, when money's involved and life or death's involved, things need to be taken more seriously than kind of the typical web developer mindset, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I had a manager once who said in my performance review, we don't want to have any code that's got any errors in it. That was the thing. So
were they firing you when they said that?
No. But it was leading up to it because my position was, I don't know what. How do you they didn't want any bugs in the code, obviously,
right?
But yeah, I don't know. There seemed to be this idea, and in Go in particular, because Go doesn't have. I'm not going to talk about Go on the JS Party website.
Well, we're going to edit this part out anyway.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, just the error handling is explicit. It's just another value that you can return from functions and things. So error handling is something you do. You put a lot of thought into because it's kind of something you explicitly handle all the time. So there's a lot of talk about errors and things. And I think, he was just tired of hearing about errors and wanted to hear about features instead. So that was it. That was one of my KPIs was, fewer errors in the computers.
Just tell them, I want a toilet made out of solid gold, but it's not in the parts,
Yeah.
Here's your awesome.
Not solid gold.
For the day.
Just
No.
get gold plated, because the solid
Painted.
one, it's actually, you know, quite soft
It's
metal.
malleable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah. And especially if you're on there for a while, you know, and get warm. Once it's warmer, you know what I mean? You're in trouble. I'm just saying, but
All right. Well, let's move
You've
on
put a
because
lot of
Matt's
thought
trying
into
to make
this.
this the longest story of the week entry. We don't vote on longest. We vote on biggest or most important. So
okay.
it's not going to
Sorry.
work, Matt. K-Ball, what do
Right.
you have for story of the week?
Something that is not going to win biggest or most important.
Okay.
However, I thought it was really interesting. So I recently saw a release announcement for a JavaScript framework called Blitz.js. And what made it interesting to me is not the framework itself, which looks like, you know, another take on trying to do kind of an all-inclusive JavaScript framework, kind of similar to what Redwood tries to do, things like that. But what made it interesting is that they are touting that they're built on top of Next.js. So we've had this trend for a while where, okay, React and Vue and these frameworks, they've become a base layer, and then people are building these higher level frameworks on top of them, like Next and Nuxt and Redwood and whatever. This is the first time I've seen someone explicitly going yet another layer and saying, okay, that first layer of additional abstraction, configuration, et cetera, that's good, but that's not good enough. We're going to go even further. And it made me wonder. I mean, this is a common pattern in the tech industry, right? You build an abstraction. Once it gets solid enough, you build another abstraction on top of it. Once it gets solid enough, you build another one on top of it. So I'm wondering if this is an outlier or if that's the phase we're in now, where we're actually going up yet one more layer in the JavaScript framework space.
I think the key phrase there was once it gets solid enough. And I just wonder if, you know, things are so moving and at a certain point, you know, on the Jenga, when you're playing Jenga, like the top of the Jenga gets so wobbly because it's built on these layers that have lost some of their footing. So, yes, we always want to be adding new layers on top because that brings functionality to more and more people, which is the goal. But it's definitely a challenge to do that. I don't know. Next.js feels pretty high level, but is this where they start calling things meta frameworks? Like it's not a framework, it's a meta framework. I believe that's.
I already call Next a meta framework, right?
This is a
higher
meta
level
framework.
Yeah.
Well, we have had Blitz's creator on JS Party last year, I believe. So we did speak Blitz. If anybody wants to go deep on that, it was just me, myself, and Brandon talking about Blitz. So if you want a full conversation about that, the episode is called Blitz Puts Rails on JavaScript. Blitz Puts React on Rails. Episode 133. So go listen to that. But
Interesting.
curious what Matt or Nick says about K-Ball's question there.
Yeah, it's interesting that I mean, that we're seeing these, and a lot of them tend to be built on top of React. Like Next is obviously, and then Redwood is too, right? Like the Vue
Yes.
framework of that is React.
It's built on React, yeah.
Yep.
So it's kind of further cementing something that that Lori Voss said on JS Party a few years ago now, that like React may just end up becoming part of the, not necessarily part of the language yet, but just it's just expected in the ecosystem in all of these frameworks, and maybe future frameworks it'll just be implied that it's React. Just kind of interesting.
Mm.
Ooh, you're queuing up my later unpopular opinion, but okay.
Oh,
Yeah,
warm it
I
up.
added and sad to that. So
Okay. So you wonder. We used to have this conversation around jQuery. React in a way is getting to the point of jQuery's ubiquity. Not really much else in similarity, but what happened with jQuery wasn't that like everything eventually became built on top of it. It's like that jQuery became somewhat built into browsers. And so you wonder if React-esque thing, I mean, then you go back to web components, right? But like how much of React will just get into the platform so that we can not have to rely upon a library, but just use some of those as primitives and build different things from there.
Yeah, that's something that's quite exciting for me, is seeing all the innovation that's happening in browsers. I mean, some of the APIs that you have now, some of the things that you can do, I find them like web components is an interesting example. I find that to all be amazing. So is Blitz.js, is that like a server side thing as well? Is it kind of a back end and a front end thing?
Yeah, so Next.js is hybrid, so you can do all client rendered, all pre-rendered stuff, similar like a Gatsby would do. And you can also have some server-side functionality with Next. And so they can call themselves a hybrid framework, where it's kind of pre-rendered by default, but also has server-side hooks to do different things. And then Blitz tries to flesh that out, I think, in a way that's akin to what Redwood is doing, which is to kind of give you a full stack, but kind of Jamstack first approach at applications. That's going from memory, by the way. So
It's got massive potential, hasn't it? Something like that. Because if you could kind of do away with, because there's a lot of things you have to worry about when you're working in those two different arenas. And if you could, through a good abstraction, do away with that. And I liked Rails. I used to be a Rails developer, actually. Some of the things like convention over configuration, I think, things like that. Go also has sensible defaults. So by default, things will kind of basically do what you want them to do, and then you kind of configure them from there. And so those kinds of ideas, I think, are really quite nice, especially for people that are new and just want to get something built, you know.
Absolutely. Well, let's do our last story of the week. This one's mine, although I didn't write it. I just found it. It's a very cool thing coming up from the V8 team.
I didn't write mine one about Citibank.
Oh, you didn't? I thought that you were reporting.
I didn't know we had to. Yeah,
that wasn't you. And Cable actually wrote Blitz.js, so it's really interesting.
Yeah, for this show.
That's why he was surprised when I said we had the creator on the show, because he just didn't remember being a guest. This was from the V8 team, specifically written by Victor Gomes, the frame shredder. Is that what he calls himself? He does. So on this piece, which I'll link in the show notes, he calls himself Victor Gomes, the frame shredder, which is a pretty sweet moniker, if you ask me. If self-proclaimed, maybe somebody gave him that. But his post is called Faster JavaScript Calls. And he's detailing some amazing work that he and the V8 team have done to make function calls in V8 quite a bit faster. I'm trying to pull up the numbers here. So when they're able to pull this off, they have 11% performance improvement in JIT-less mode when you do not have a just-in-time compiler. And when using Turbofan, which I did not click through on Turbofan to see what it is. Turbofan is one of V8's optimizing compilers, leveraging a concept called Sea of Nodes. I'm just reading this off the website. So this is like another level of performance improvements that V8 can do. They get up to 40% speed up doing this interesting trick. And I'll just read a little bit from it because he explains it pretty well. He writes that JavaScript allows calling a function with a different number of arguments than the expected number of parameters, as in one can pass fewer or more arguments than the declared formal parameters. The former case is called under application, and the latter is called over application. So this is a feature of JavaScript that allows you to do this. And he says in the under application case, the remaining parameters get assigned the undefined value. In the over application case, the remaining arguments can be accessed by using the rest parameter and the arguments property, which is the arguments keyword. Or they are simply superfluous and they can be ignored. So lots of cases like they don't really matter. And V8 has like this special machinery in place to deal with this argument size mismatch. So if you're passing in the wrong number of arguments, either too many or too little, there's like this whole dance that V8 has to do in order to handle that. And this performance improvement that they were managed to do basically just optimizes that case. And they do it by reversing the arguments. And he goes through it in the blog post, details on how they're like changing the way things get put on the stack and off the stack. It's way over my head or way underneath in terms of its depth for me to completely understand, but it's really awesome work and something that I just love when lower level things get improved and just everybody in the world benefits, because like that's like the power of leverage, right? In software development, like you can do this tiny little thing, which was a lot of work for them. But at the end of the day, the change that they made, I think, is in code probably minuscule compared to like the entirety of the V8 code base. And it can just squeeze out performance for everybody who uses V8 all around the world. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. So that case you mentioned, is that, would it only work if there's the wrong or a different number of arguments? Or is it like the check that it has to do that was expensive? So is this because how often do you send the wrong number of arguments to a function in JavaScript?
Well, we're
I mean,
talking JavaScript developers, right? So
I was gonna say I never do, but that's because my code's always perfect. I don't know.
The
Yeah.
TypeScript, so you know exactly.
I actually
how
think
many.
it's not too uncommon of a case to have like a REST parameter, right? So it's instead of reframing it or instead of framing it as
Accidental.
the wrong number of arguments, there's two versions. One is optional arguments, and the other is variable numbers of arguments, right? So this is the
Right.
mechanism by which both of those are implemented within JavaScript.
Yeah. Which
Oh,
doesn't
yeah.
scale very well, but is a feature that's been there for a very long time. Lots of people, when you have optional number of arguments, they'll just pass an object, right? And you can set defaults. There's better stuff you can do. I think use of arguments as a keyword or as a, I think it's a keyword inside of a function, which represents that and returns you a list, is not something that I use very often, and maybe something that some library authors have to deal with in order to provide a nice API to some of their functions. But I think in many cases, that pattern has been replaced by objects in terms of optional arguments or variable arity, basically.
Yeah, and I don't even think arguments exist anymore in things like arrow functions.
Oh, really? So Matt's question stands though: is it improving all function calls or only ones? And I guess, is it the check that it improves that? I don't know the answer to that, Matt. Is it the check that improves the speed, or is it the process once you get into that, right, that deals with it? I don't know. I have to grok the blog post better than I did to answer that one.
But either way, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
That's all right.
One of the things that he highlights at the end of the post is that while this may not be super common in user space code, the feature was used often in web frameworks to create more flexible APIs. So
There you go. Yeah.
there's another example where, because some of the libraries or frameworks that almost everyone is using utilize this feature, even if it's relatively obscure for some people, it is actually showing up in a lot of code.
Right.
Yeah, and people like the frame shredder, they really measure that. When they're doing optimizations like this, they're really measuring this stuff. Often it's very data driven, so they probably wouldn't waste their time if it's not going to have a big benefit. And you just imagine that your job, just the thing you do, makes JavaScript a bit better, and then the whole world, the whole of the internet, it just gets a bit better. That must be quite good for job satisfaction, don't you think?
100%. I think if you want to maximize impact, one of the things you can do is go work for a large B2C platform. Like you could work for a Twitter or a Facebook. If you want to maximize effect, right? Like I'm going to affect the most people this way, something with a lot of users. The other way you can do it is go the other direction and work on the platforms that people create the apps with, right? Like you could work on Apple's Swift and what's the name of their frameworks? I'm forgetting because I haven't done Apple stuff in a long time. Cocoa?
Swift UI.
That's old. Swift UI, but what's the name of their iOS SDK? Anyway, it doesn't matter. Apple stuff.
It's not open source though. That.
No, I'm saying you can go work on it. You can still work on it. Yeah. You can still have a large impact, right? Like everybody who builds on Apple's platforms is going to be impacted by that work.
Yeah.
But the web, is the most impactful platform I think you could possibly work on, to your point, Matt, and working on the things that we build on top of is like a huge job satisfaction, I would think.
Maybe.
Did you
I
just
feel
resign
like
to calling V8 the web, as in the JavaScript engine?
No, I didn't mean to, but
you kind of did. I think it really depends on what you find satisfactory, right? So like same thing can be said for like working deep in operations inside of a Google or an Amazon or something like that, right? Like you spend all of your time finding these like essentially micro optimizations, right? Things where you're saving a few percent overall here and there. And in this case, it's a large percent on a particular thing, which is actually a relatively small percent of any sort of overall runtime. So you find these micro optimizations, and then you scale them out over the fact that you're running this on however many billion copies or machines or what have you. And I agree that doing it, for something like Chrome V8 or what have you is one of the widest scale outs you're going to see on that. But I don't know. For me, that's actually not very satisfying because it's focusing on these little tiny little pieces, and you have to scale it out. Like that, the actual impact on any one individual is very small, and it's having massive overall impact. You're probably saving, hundreds and thousands of CPU hours and yada yada spread out across the entire world, but no individual is likely to notice the difference. And I far prefer to swing the other way, where there's a set of individuals for whom the work that I'm doing is extremely impactful, even if that set of individuals is smaller.
So you'd rather make a few people very happy rather than loads of people a little bit happy.
I mean, ideally, I'd make many people very happy, but I'm gonna start at the first part of that, right? Because and this is one of the reasons I'm kind of a startup, small company guy for a long time. Is like you start with figuring out something that makes at least a subset of people very happy, and then you try to gradually expand the set of people that it's applicable to.
Yeah.
But even if you're only making a percent of web users happy with some optimization, that's still potentially millions of people.
I'm going to make a percent of people
Cable
happy.
doesn't care.
Well, here's the thing. Like, I think these tiny improvements aren't actually, like, over time they add up. Absolutely. But like, you need 20 frame shredders to make something that ends up being user visible.
I think it's just two different views of the world, and both have big impact. But what do you like to do, and what do you care about? Maybe you like to see that impact big time in small number of people's lives, or maybe you like to think about the fact that I just made this one patch to this one project, and even in the most minuscule ways possible, I've touched millions of lives. So it's kind of just a perspective thing. I definitely appreciate that your perspective, K-Ball, being represented, because I do tend to think of like the person who makes Ruby faster, and then like how, look what that leverage does. But that's just because I've never worked on those kind of things. Maybe I have a little bit of envy of like, man, I wish I could reach that many people with that small of a change. Because I just never have.
See, and I'm going the opposite way. I'm aspiring to be the next left pad.
I got an idea for you.
You want to F up that many people's lives.
You should start a library called Right Pad. I mean,
well, I hear there's these dependency hacking tricks that.
Good tee up. Are we doing that one, or are we going to call it a segment?
I didn't read the article, so.
This has been Story of the Week. Turns out the Story of the Week was mine because it was the best. We'll talk to you just in a minute.
Who decides that then? Did you just decide that on your own, unilaterally?
Yeah, that's because I'm the host. So
right,
that's how things work around here. You should have been here last week for the debate show, where two teams debated, and then at the end, and I was just the host. At the end of the debate, I just declared myself the winner. So it's a running theme. We're on a break now, so feel free to talk amongst yourselves.
Relax.
Relax. Run to the restroom real quick. I'll be back in a sec.
That's good, isn't it? Didn't know you could do that.
I'm probably have to clean up that ending and cut it before I said that. Before we went trailing off there. On K-Ball's last point. That's the thing also about being the editor, Matt, is I get to cut out all my dumb bits, but I leave all yours in.
Yeah, you somehow managed to add dumb bits that I don't even remember saying. When I listen back.
Well, I have a deep fake version of your voice, so it's easy.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm pleased that's what you're using it for then, actually.
At least you can blame me.
Yeah.
You know, when you don't remember something stupid you said, you're like, Jared must have had that.
Yeah. Or maybe you could do can you do a British accent?
I better not, you know.
You can. You can.
No, I can just do the Conan O'Brien one where he does the I think his is kind of I think I've done it for you before. It's just that when he says governor, basically, that's all he says, and he just does this.
Yeah.
That's all I can do.
That's a classic.
Did Conan O'Brien come up with that, or has everybody always done that? I think he was trying to be little. What's the boy from the Christmas Story?
Oh, Tiny Tim.
Tiny Tim. I think he's being Tiny Tim.
Yeah. It sounds Victorian, like a Victorian chimney sweep.
Yeah.
There's loads of them. There's loads of them knocking about. around here.
Victorian chimney sweeps.
You can't move the tiny little Victorian chimney sweep. Chimney sweeps. What's the plural of that? Is it like sheep?
Chimney sweeps.
Sweepers?
Sweep is plural, maybe. Is that what you're trying to say?
I don't know. Apparently, it's good luck to shake their hand.
I've never seen more than one at a time. And they've always been on the telly, as you would say.
Yeah, we do say that. It's short for television.
I know.
We like to, we're trying to save time. We've got all these extra letters that we have to get through, so we need to find other ways to save time.
How do you spell telly? Like Teleou? Oh no, that's French.
Yeah.
Telei.
All of our unnecessary letters do come from the French influence, apparently. So we do blame the French for.
I just figure you're like fans of vowels. You just appreciate vowels.
Yeah.
So you just kind of shove a few more in there.
Color. Yeah. Color. But yeah. I don't know.
Color. That's how I'd read that. If I wasn't smarter, I'd read it color.
That sounds fancy, actually.
Sounds like something you might want to drink.
Yeah.
That's Kahlua.
That's a good name for a drink, actually. It could be all rainbow colored.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know how you do that in a drink, but we'll figure that out later.
K-Ball's back, so we can stop stalling.
Hey, Ball. Welcome back. You're muted.
Oh,
there you
here
are.
I am. I said rainbow colored drink. I think you could do that by freezing different ice cubes with different types of food coloring.
Mm-hmm.
And they slowly melt into it.
That'd be nice.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
I was watching basketball last night, which is an American sport where people try to throw a round ball into a hoop. That's for
They're running around with baskets.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And the Miami Heat have multicolored jerseys where like the right side is pink and the left side's blue. They're both like neon, not quite neon, but bright, and they fade into each other. It's very strange. It's kind of interesting. So like as they run down the court one way, it looks like they're wearing pink, and as they run back the other way, it looks like they're wearing blue. That's
really confusing. Are they doing that? Is it like a camouflage? Yeah. What would could you describe it using CSS gradient so we can get an idea for what that looks like, Jared?
Yeah. So it's about 243, 375,
Put it in the show notes.
No, we won't. Okay.
Yeah. I thought you were going to do it in Tailwind classes. From grade 300.
I haven't learned Tailwind yet, so I couldn't do that.
Oh, that's great.
Nor have I learned RGB, so I couldn't do that either. All right, you guys ready for segment 2?
The TIL?
TIL.
All right.
Matt,
are you ready to come up with a jingle for us?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I'll do it.
Okay, let's do it.
So what to do? Oh, you're gonna ask.
I'll cue. Yeah, I'll cue you up. All right, we are now ready to share things that we have learned recently. This is our Today I Learned segment, or TIL. And we have an awesome jingle for TIL. Wait, no, we don't. But we would love if Matt could provide one on the spot. Matt,
since you did so well on the previous one,
please give us a royalty-free TIL jingle.
Royalty-free?
Yes.
Okay. Today I learned. Yeah? I mean, I didn't know where that was going, but is that all right?
It started great and it ended great.
And it wasn't very long, so there wasn't much of a middle.
That's right. So all around, high marks.
Great. No, please.
The only problem with it is that the segment is called TIL, which you didn't even say. So
okay. I've got time. I'll do another one.
Maybe we'll do a reverse royalty, and every time we play it, you have to give us a nickel.
Right. TIL. L. Oh, I could do with a word that rhymes with L. Could anyone think of a? Hey.
Like I fell.
Going to hell.
Fell.
Going to hell.
I'm gonna
under
tell.
myself.
Oh, I've got something I could tell. We could do like. Oh, there's something I'm going to tell. It's TIL.
That's it.
Rock and roll.
That's the winner.
Yeah. Cool.
Cool.
All
Now
right,
you
can we
learn the
have him
reason.
on every week?
Now you learn why we brought you on, because we just really needed jingles.
This is, are you really living up to your name? Because it's like JS Party, and it's like, you expect dancing, music, booze.
right.
With Go Time, all we're really guaranteeing is it's going to take up some time. And to be fair, we deliver on that promise every week.
That's right.
You're
I
talking about
dance
Go,
every week
so-
I'm on.
Yeah. I saw you dancing earlier,
That's
mate.
why you're
actually. I
welcome
was
here.
impressed.
Well, if Go Time and JS Party had hair, JS Party would be a blonde and Go Time would be a brunette. What can I say?
I don't know what that means.
Well, blondes have more fun.
You lost
I'm,
me too,
I'm
Jared.
triggered. I'm triggered by the mention of having hair, if I'm honest.
You guys don't know the old saying, blondes have more fun? Come on.
Oh.
It's a terrible stereotype about people based on the color of their hair.
You're
Turns
walking
out
it back.
it plays into your favor
Jared, when your foot gets far enough in your mouth, you want to start like pulling it out rather than continuing to swallow.
You're saying that because you're brunette, K-Ball. All right, let's move on. Edit break right here. Okay, we'll see. TIL. Nick, hit us up. You've learned lots of things. I heard there might be even more than one that you might be sharing, so please do.
All right. Well, this is something that I actually learned yesterday and I used yesterday, which is pretty awesome. And have you heard of this cool thing called optional chaining? It's a new operator in JavaScript.
I have.
Yeah, it goes question mark dot. And it's really cool because then you can say like, I want to get to, foo question mark dot bar. And if that exists, I get the value of bar. But if it doesn't, I just get undefined. Did you know? And today I learned that you can use that for calling a method as well. So instead of saying like foo and foo with parentheses to call it,
Right.
you can just say foo question mark dot parentheses and call it. And
Yeah,
if it
that
doesn't
makes
exist,
sense.
it won't call it.
I did
Because
not know
methods are
that.
properties in JavaScript, right? They're
Yeah.
just living on those objects.
Yeah, it's amazing. So
That's
cool. I can't wait to see how it goes over in code review.
That is cool. Now, how many times can you do that in a row? Like, can you just nest and just keep on going? Is there a
Well, it depends on, I would imagine, if your function is returning an object itself that's going to have a method on it, right? Because it's still using the same question of, does this property exist on this object? But in that case, the property is a method. So in like a jQuery style API, you could use it indefinitely. You could question mark dot to your heart's content.
That sounds fun. That sounds like a good way of taking back that new optimization they put in V8, just wiping it out. You saved us 40%. I'm going to cost us infinite percent. Anything else you learned recently, Nick?
Yes. I have been playing around with SSH tunneling. And it's really simple, and I don't really have a clear goal with it, other than I was trying to... I run a lot of Docker containers, which means my fans spin up a lot. And I was like, I wonder if I could just like have a machine running those Docker containers, but let it be, pretend like it's just my machine. And I could totally do that to an extent with SSH tunneling. So I could just SSH into that machine and local forward all of the ports that I need, like localhost 3000. Anytime I try and hit localhost :3000 on my machine, actually go hit localhost or go hit 3000 on the machine that I'm SSHing into, which is really cool. And you can do it the opposite way too, where you could expose your local machine globally. But I'm scared to do that right now.
Make sure
I don't
you do
really
that on
have a use
purpose.
case. Yeah. But it's really cool that you can do that. And it's like one line to set up, or you can add it to your SSH config so that every time I SSH into that machine, I can just have it automatically forward those ports and everything is immediately set up. And then when I disconnect, it's all taken down.
Right.
Easy.
That is cool. Here's a use case for that, which I used to do quite often, is if you have an admin tool, like a GUI that connects to like a database, and you want to connect to a remote database, but you do not want to expose that port remotely, of course, because you do not want your database to be exposed to the world. And if your tool does not have tunneling built in, which a lot of them nowadays will have tunneling built into the connection inside the tool, but if they don't, they just have regular SSH connections. you can, or not regular SSH connections, regular direct database connections, you can port for, or you can basically tunnel to that remote machine, expose it just locally through the SSH tunnel, and then connect directly with the database client. Pretty nifty. And are you going for the trifecta, or should we pass it on to K-Ball?
I got one more. I could do it.
Let's do it.
All right. I've been playing around with template literal types in TypeScript 4.1, and they're a new type. It's using template literals like how you'd use them normally in JavaScript, but you can use that to dynamically build types, specifically like string literal types, where you can say that this value can be the string Jared or K-Ball, and if it's anything other than that, you get a type error. Well, you can dynamically create that. So I could have like a list of all of the guests on JS Party and then create a type, meaning that, you know, the current speaker is one of these three types, and it's, you know, Matt, Jared, or K-Ball. And combining that with the ability to import only types, where you just say import type, and it's just a regular import statement after that. But when it goes to build, it won't actually like have a binding to that library. So it's only importing the values to be used as types in your local code, so that you won't accidentally like massively increase your bundle size. And the ability to call recursive types. So putting three things together. So putting all of those together, you can create some really cool combinations of dynamic types. And the specific one that I've been playing around with is for all of our internationalization. We have this massive JSON file, and it's nested. So you can have like, you know, this page is, you know, the account preferences, and that is an object that contains subkeys, and there might be subkeys in there, but they all end up becoming a string at some point, and that's your English translation of whatever. And then you can have a French file, a Chinese file, all of those. And the way we reference that by using React.IET-Next is by using dot notation. So I can say like account preferences dot title to get that. But that's just a string in my code. But using recursive types and template literal types, and using import type to import the shape of the JSON file, I can then create a dynamic type that is the dot notation. So I can just get an array back, or a union type back of all of the possible combinations of combining like account preferences dot title or account preferences dot subpage dot title or whatever. And it'll all be perfectly typed, which is really cool.
I feel like you need to write this up, because I was trying to hold that all in my head as you were saying it.
Yeah.
And completely and utterly failed.
Yeah. I'll put in
I followed you, but I couldn't repeat it back. So probably didn't follow.
I'll put in a TypeScript playground link in the show notes, and yeah, I will get around to writing something up for sure.
Yeah. I feel like you just proved that typing in TypeScript is Turing complete.
It is.
Wow. What's TypeScript again? Just kidding. K-Ball, hit us up with a TIL.
All right. Last week, something like that, I learned that you can embed SVG filters inside CSS filters. So CSS has a filter property that you can put on images. It is cool, but not as powerful or as powerful in general as SVG's filtering capabilities. And so used to be, okay, I've got an image, I want to filter it more than I can do with CSS. I need to actually embed it inside an SVG. But it turns out you can flip that around and embed your SVG filter in the CSS filter property and just reference it there. So I think that's super cool. I think I'm a longtime huge fan of SVGs, but they do have this pain point of like, it's hard to get them to interact with the rest of your HTML unless you embed it straight in the page and yada, yada, yada. But here you can put it in your CSS and get all that power just out of the box.
That's great.
Yeah, that's cool. Link us up. More info on that for the show notes, please, sir. Matt, how about yourself? What have you learned today and or recently?
Yeah, well, it was today, actually. I think I'm the only one that's really respected this segment in that way.
Yeah, you win.
I tell you what, as mentioned earlier, the APIs now in browsers, and this might be old news to people that do a lot more JavaScript than I do, But there's things like there's a WebAuthn API that lets you use the fingerprint or Face ID stuff, in your JavaScript code for authentication, things like this, which I just think is, it's kind of what you need, isn't it? It's what you expect. But you see, when I started doing this, everything was sandboxed so tightly. The worlds were so different. The JavaScript world was just so different. You didn't really interact much with the device at all. And increasingly, as they open all these APIs, I think we're just going to see more and more kind of powerful things being built, and I kind of love seeing that. I'm amazed. I remember when I first discovered about local storage, and there's IndexedDB in the browser. It is kind of amazing to see that. But yeah, so I learned that. That's what I TIL'd today, was that you can use fingerprint auth in your JavaScript.
That is awesome.
You can access sensors as well on the device. GPS coordinates, I guess, have been around a while, but also like things like the battery. You can find out how, so maybe don't do some things. Don't turn off animations if the user's battery's low or something, be a nice citizen for them. I don't know. It's good, isn't it? It's like a good one.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Cheers.
And the fact that you learned it today means you really respect my authority,
Yeah. I feel like,
appreciate.
Yeah, I feel like I'm having dinner with Saddam Hussein, and I'm really nervous about upsetting him. I've never had dinner with Saddam Hussein or any dictator, actually.
Try to back that one off.
Yeah.
You haven't had dinner with Jared yet. You mentioned any dictator.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
That's right. Internet acquaintances.
Yeah.
Remember, I already said, hopefully we'll never have dinner. Didn't I say that earlier on the show? Hopefully we'll never.
Jared's not so bad over dinner, or lunch, I guess, is what we shared. But
what did you have?
Lunch. He just told you.
Yeah. What specifically?
Food.
Okay. Thank you. See what I mean? Like, I'm nervous now. Don't want to upset the king.
I don't remember. What the lunch I'm thinking of was some nice restaurant up in the Presidio in San Francisco, and Jared was in town for a conference. But I don't remember what we ate.
It was walking distance from the art. What's that place called? The art museum.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Where was it? Where was that conference?
Presidio, but that's all I remember.
I never go there. All right. This is a break. We're gonna cut earlier than this. So
why? This is gold.
Because I can't think of that name of that place, and the cable is not helping me out at all.
I just want to know what food. I just want to know what food you had, and you could have just made up any food, but instead we have to fight.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it's all right. Just kidding.
I'm like, I can't just make up a food, man.
Potato. Dictator.
Dictato.
Yeah.
It's that art museum, K-Ball. Come on, where they had the event. I walked right.
It sounds like
I didn't go to the event. I just met you for lunch.
You weren't at the event. I thought that we. My bad. I thought we were at the conference together and went to lunch together. So that's why I was relying on you. But you asked right.
You were at the conference, and I drove up because I was like, "Hey, I've never met this guy in person."
That's right. Fair enough.
It sounds like you failed to remember an alibi, Jared. And you're like, it was the art museum near the built. Yeah, it's good though.
That's why this is part of the break, because I don't allow myself to sound this inept on the show. That only Nick can do that. Only Nick can sound that inept. And
Palace of the Fine Arts?
Thanks.
Could it have been Palace of the Fine Arts?
Yeah, I think that was it. Palace of the Fine Arts.
I'm just looking for what are the art places near where the cafe is, because I know what the restaurant we went to was, but I didn't know where you were.
Well, that's what he was asking. You should have just answered.
It's in the Presidio. It's the Presidio Cafe. Like, what do you want?
I don't know.
Maybe, do they have the menu online? Maybe you could just have a quick look.
You could just look it up real quick.
Just find out what you had. Just see if it jogs your memory.
Let's see. They do have it online. All I'm seeing is banquet menus, though.
Yeah, that sounds like what a dictator would take you to, doesn't it? Big banquet.
I feel like this is not the same menu that it was, but I could be wrong. Oh no, this
All right.
says dinner
Let's
packages.
move on. Let's move on. I don't think the menu really matters. I think he's sus. I think he's here to wreak havoc on the show. And he's winning right now. He's beating us.
I'm having a great time. I sometimes have to host Go Time, and there's like I have to be responsible. So here, I'm technically a guest, and you've failed to control me.
I think
No, I have the final edit, so you're completely under control.
Yeah.
That's my point. That's why I am the dictator here.
I think I just might have just had a burger. I don't know. It looks like
Thank
He's
you.
really trying to figure this
That's
out.
hard.
it's standard American junk food.
Yeah, that's right.
That's all right.
I remember we sat outside.
I do remember that.
Mm.
And,
Had beer. I
Had
think.
beer.
Oh, that
was
sounds
good.
nice.
It was good
Remember when
beer.
you could sit outside and go to restaurants and stuff?
I know, right? Like have a beer together after, at a conference that at least one of you had traveled to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I can't imagine it now. I can't really remember what it was like. It's going to be dead weird when we start.
I try not to remember what it was like because then I start crying.
It was
Yeah.
fun.
Mm. Yes.
Anyways, let's hop into segment 3 here before I lose control of my panel again. Before
All
we
right,
start
we're gonna
looking
get a
up what we
jingle?
ate a couple of years ago. Well, we have a jingle for Unpopular Opinion. Unless, do you want to go live acoustic version, Matt? Can you do that? Could you actually do that?
Try. I could try it. It's very high. I remember screaming it because I made this other jingle.
Yeah, do it.
Try it.
Because okay, and then if it sounds terrible, I'll just put the actual one in. But
Yeah.
You should put both of them in so that you have one and then the contrast.
oh, that would be
Yeah,
good.
this could be like the B-side where it's like the unplugged acoustic version.
That's right.
Just
All
trying
right.
to remember what key it's in. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll-
do you want to
I'll
just do it? Okay.
I'll cue you up. I'll cue you up. Wait for it. Okay, well, we are back. And did you know that GoTime has a regular slot called Unpopular Opinion? You may have known that because we've stolen that slot once before and did better unpopular opinions than they generally come up with. But we actually have the man, the myth, the legend. Matt Ryer sings the jingle for that. He went in studio, he produced it. It took weeks, didn't it, Matt?
Yeah.
And really put a lot of effort into it. But today we're going to have the live acoustic version of the Unpopular Opinion theme song for you. This is a special treat, folks. Let's listen to it.
Whoa! Unpopular opinion. Whoa! Unpopular opinion. I also smashed the mic with the guitar, which is rock and roll, basically.
That's
That's what you get when you go live, right?
That's right.
Anything could happen.
Well, thank you for humoring us, Matt. And
Put the other one in if you.
yeah, we're
that
going
was
to have to.
terrible. Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
just terrible.
Yeah.
And let's hear what you actually have to say now, because one thing I've noticed as the producer of GoTime is that you like to queue up other people's unpopular opinions, but you rarely turn the spotlight back on yourself and share your own thoughts. I feel like it's kind of a cowardly move, to be honest. But now here you are, you're the guest, and you've obviously shown you had the bravado to rock and roll a theme song. Can you share with us an unpopular opinion?
Yes, I can. And it's about JavaScript too. So
Okay, let's hear it.
I think there's too much stuff in JavaScript. When I write JavaScript, I use a tiny little subset of the things you can do, really tiny, and I try and shrink that as small as possible. And I feel like that improves readability. It improves. I don't have to learn all the new features because there's lots of kind of really cool stuff. I mean, the question mark dot thing, I love that. I'm definitely going to be using that one. That's extremely useful. But I try and use just a really small little. I almost have like a subset of JavaScript that I use. Could almost have its own name. But yeah, that's my unpopular opinion. I think JavaScript has too many language features. Should be smaller. What do you think of that?
Well, what do you think about food options? Do you feel like there's too many choices of what you might eat out there in the world? And you'd prefer if there were less? Or would you like to just select the subset of food options that you appreciate and use those?
Yeah, I mean, well, actually, like if you go to a restaurant, nice restaurants only give you a small menu, don't they?
But you also have the option of restaurant. So that's kind of a subset of a subset in that case. I got no problem with that. That's their view of the world. Like that's their little particular. You can have its own name, like its own little math script.
But if you're collaborating, though, if we're writing open source things, there's a benefit to having, not all those features used in a language. There's a benefit that you get when you can, like, look at the code and you know immediately what it is. With all the language features that you could use, that's a steeper learning curve. That's just a simple kind of numbers game, really. There. So I feel like there's a benefit always to smaller and simpler. But I'm not going to have a go at anyone if they're using complicated things. Although, if I'm in charge of reviewing the pull request, one of the things I'll say is that is really clever. Well done. Can you just write it in a really verbose, boring way, please, so that I can read it?
Sounds like you're going to decline your own pull request with the question mark dot function call.
Well, yeah, but that, I don't know, that is quite nice, isn't it? We've needed that. We've needed that for a long time, because I still have code that's like, if this and this, or using the tertiary operator to try and find out if I'm going to show something. And I'm surprised, like Svelte, I use Svelte a lot. I was quite surprised that they haven't solved that, actually, because it's all processed at compile time. So they do have an opportunity they could have implemented that, frankly, quite easily. Maybe they knew about the question mark dot thing that was coming. But yeah, I mean, it's a very common case to say, in dynamic languages and with dynamic data, to say, if this field is here, then let's show it. And if not, we'll use a different field, or we won't show it, or something like that. Yeah, I feel like I'm actually a fan of that question mark dot thing. Although it is weird that you use the dot when you're calling a method.
Mm-hmm.
I would expect it to just be the question mark and then brackets, parentheses. But too late.
There might be some backwards compatibility reason why that couldn't be the case.
So you said that you would prefer to only use a smaller subset of JavaScript. Could you name that? Like, could you give a name to that? And or
Go.js?
How would you enforce that?
Yeah, well, I don't know about. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you could do linter. You could actually have a compiler that only understood a subset of JavaScript. Yeah, and also you could do away with older patterns and things, or older language features that you don't want to support. There's projects that do this kind of thing sometimes, but I don't know really exactly what it is. But there's, it's just really like when junior devs come to a project, if it's trivial for them to get going, I feel like that's kind of a good property to have in a project. Like it's
sure. Isn't that what a linter provides, though? I mean, like, or style guide, like ESLint or style guide.
Yeah, I mean, I
provide
think
that guide rails.
This is the kind of thing that some languages do it in the language. Some languages do it by adoption. Some languages have it, like Perl is infamous for Tim Towdy, right? There's more than one way to do it. You do it however you want. You live you do you, and you have write-only code. And then Python, which is a similarly flexible language, has the Python way. And there's a right way to do it, and there's a wrong way to do it. And those are both kind of pervasive throughout the communities. And I feel like JavaScript, it's very fragmented. There's some parts of the JavaScript world that are very much in the Perl camp. Do what you want to do, write it however you want to write it, however. And then there are subsets of the communities where they have very tight linting, they have various other things to assert a subset of the language.
So it sounds like they
superset.
all agree with me.
Subset.
Nick is just trying to turn this into a TypeScript conversation. Let's cut it off before he succeeds, and let's move to the next unpopular opinion.
And TypeScript is great. They give you 2 different languages to mess up in, right? You can mess up in the typing language, and you can mess up in the actual code.
They have 3. You can do that, or you can mess up in your js.comments because you don't want to write real TypeScript. Oh, wait, did I already give my unpopular opinion?
Well, feel free to reiterate it, or if that was it, we can just go to K-Ball.
No, that wasn't actually mine. Go ahead, K-Ball.
Oh, my unpopular opinion is that it really doesn't matter at all which JavaScript framework you're using, whether you're using React or Vue or Svelte or even Angular or Ember or vanilla JavaScript or what have you. They're all tools. They make some things easier. They make some things harder. What really matters is that you pick something consistent across your entire team and that you're all working within that and being consistent within that. I have worked in mixed code bases where this team picked this thing and that team picked that thing, and that sucks. But if you're consistent within your team and your code base, I don't really think it matters at all which framework you're using.
Yeah,
I
that's
like
not unpopular with me. I quite like that. And I'd go as far as saying, whatever makes you productive, whatever you can get to the product quicker. Like it's almost, that we do argue a lot and we care about it. So you understand why. But often it gets into like right and wrong, and people are kind of have these sort of fundamental ideas about things that are fighting. And in practice, it's rarely about right and wrong. It's about taste and trend. I mean, Tailwind is a great example of we're almost going back to, do you remember we used to put the styles in the style attribute, and then we were like, oh, that's terrible. We've never, you're repeating all the styles everywhere. We're not going to do that. And Tailwind kind of takes a step back in that direction. And because it's now we have components, it's not as big a deal as it was before. But yeah, it does seem to be like quite trendy, and it's worth remembering that when you really love and care about something, it's worth remembering we are kind of just in this sort of zeitgeist at the moment. And so chill out a bit, I would say. Chill out, JS. Yeah, project.
The only problem with not being able to switch your current framework is you can't write your blog post about how you're switching frameworks. I mean, so
what are you going to write about?
Exactly. That's the problem. You're going to write about how you rewrote your blog platform. Those are the 2 blog posts that we write as developers. We write the one where we rewrote our blog platform, and we write the other one where we switched from one thing to the other. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. Yeah. All right, Nick, your turn. Oh, wait. Yeah, that was right. Nick, your turn.
Yeah. So I probably should have gone after you, Matt, because this does kind of tie into yours a little bit now that I think about it. And that's, I think the ESLint is out of control. And it's just kind of ridiculous. There are some good rules to have in there, and linting overall is pretty good. But then I just look at all of the rules that are added, like to the main project I work on, and it is so constraining, and for no good reason, because I just end up writing the ESLint disable next line comment above it, and every time I run across like an issue like this, like using that optional chaining to call a method. Like I mentioned in the first segment, that is disallowed by my ESLint. And if I just did like the foo and like the long form of that, where I just check to see if that value exists before calling it, that's also disabled for the same rule. And they're just, ESLint rules are out of control. They don't actually help beyond a certain limit. Like there's definitely diminishing returns with that. And they completely slow down your editor, because it has to chug through all of those rules and process everything. So stick to something a little more, I won't say standard, like standard is good, but like stick to some standard small rules, and don't just go crazy thinking that, on every Friday, the values have to be ending in a Y or something. I don't know. Just don't put the silly rules in there.
And you can configure ESLint right, you can configure everything about it.
Right.
So Go
Label
has
it.
this, Go has this thing called Go Thumped.
Here we go.
Oh, I know, but come on, this is something that could be valuable, I think, for the JS community. Go Thumped doesn't give you any options at all. It's very opinionated. That's it. You just have to use it. It sorts out your tabs. It makes you use tabs, and the code formatting is done. It's very opinionated, and what that means is a lot of Go code. I mean, all Go code looks very familiar. Of course, there's still ways you can do different design things, and you can still make a mess. But you get this benefit of sometimes I'll go to repositories and I'll read the code and I feel like I've written that code. And if you think about like contributing to other projects, that takes a weight off. That's a great kind of property to have.
Oh yeah,
It's
I really
like
like
prettier,
tools like
but
Prettier. Yeah.
prettier is also configurable though, right?
Mhm. To an extent, but it's very small in what you can configure, and it's really nice having that. Like you said, like I can go look at code and it looks like I wrote it, and I use that as a shorthand to write code because I know that I can write things as terse as possible, and then hit save, and Prettier just takes care of it for me, and it looks nice, which I
Right.
really like. But kind of to that, we are kind of in a very roundabout way getting that in JavaScript, sort of through Dino. Like Dino has a thumped command as well that allows you to do that in a built-in way where you don't bring in any external dependencies, which is
Nice.
pretty cool. I don't think you could add it to Node at this point, but it is pretty cool seeing that in a fresh project like Dino.
Yeah.
You also said thumped instead of like FMT or whatever, so that you get points from the Go community from that.
Oh no.
I'll make sure they send them over. No, it's okay. Well, it's not going to hurt your
thanks.
reputation.
I have an idea for an
thanks, it's
awesome
rejected it.
fork. I think we should fork the Go project and just track it identically to everything that goes in, except for change the tabs to spaces on Go Thumped. And then you got me. I'm there with you.
Yeah.
We'll call it stop.
You can change the width of a tab, you know. I don't think you can change the widths of spaces.
I don't want to. I want to look like the way I wrote it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. That's an unpopular opinion right there. We're running short on time. I'll just do mine really fast. I think software developers spend too much time on Twitter. And that's my unpopular opinion, and myself included. I also think we write too much on Twitter. I've seen too many blog posts that are tweet storms and don't exist anywhere else. That basically goes into the ephemera and disappears, or Twitter gets your Google juice in eternity or whatever. So I'm cool with like the one-offs and the jokes and all that. But if you're going to write a blog post, write it on your blog and then maybe tweet some quotes out of it and get the socials going around there. Just don't write for Twitter for free, because you should write for yourself.
Look forward to hearing you continue on with this on Clubhouse.
Follow me on Clubhouse. I have never had a club.
You realize none of us
Talk
have
about
shares
ephemeral.
in Changelog. Sorry.
No, but there is a value. There's a value proposition, isn't there?
Yeah.
So it's definitely not a 1-for-1.
But actually, I do spend too much time on Twitter, and like I find myself getting addicted to checking the notifications sometimes as well, which is a common problem. To the point it got bad, I almost had to discus my phone into the Thames.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I would have, the discus, the Olympic thing. I would have done it with a spin and everything. Because it's it's an expensive phone. It deserves a good send off.
Some pomp and circumstance.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, if you ever do that, videotape it with your other phone. I don't know. I don't know how to video things once you
live stream it. I could live stream it because for a while it'd still keep streaming, wouldn't it, as it's descending?
Then you can go back and watch it and get the video will already have been streamed up to the YouTube where they take your value and give it to you. Okay. Let's really quickly do shout outs. Make it fast, guys. I will quickly do a shout out to freecodecamp.org. Y'all probably know about Freecodecamp. It's an awesome place to send people where they can learn all sorts of programming skills. And the reason why I'm shouting Quincy and the team out right now, they are doing a new data science curriculum. So there's a pledge drive going on, and it's going on this month. and it's for creating an awesome, really robust data science curriculum. It's being matched right now by Daryl Silver has agreed to match up to $150,000 raised. So every dollar you put in turns into $2. So shout out to Quincy and the Freecodecamp team. They're doing awesome work. I used to have to hem and haw when people ask me how they get started, self-taught style in this industry. And now I just send them to freecodecamp.org and say, like, come back to me after you've spent a few hundred hours, going through this content and doing those things. So it's an awesome resource. And no doubt that data science curriculum will be a huge resource. It's all free. It's all available once it's out there for anybody to, get those skills. So shout out to Freecodecamp. Nick, shout outs.
Yeah, I will shout out Sean Wang on Twitter, or on Twitter, he's known as Swix. His whole learning in public mantra is really cool. And I've learned a lot from like blog posts and things that he's been putting out as I kind of look into building different things, doing things more in public, kind of thinking about that. It's just really cool. And I like that he shares so much and is very open about that. So yeah, Swix.
Awesome. K-Ball.
I'm going to shout out the Vite project, VITE. I just learned it was pronounced Vite, which is French for fast. This is a project that Evan Yu, the founder or the original creator of Vue.js, was working on. I thought for a long time it was just doing fun stuff, a static site builder in Vue or whatever, but it has turned into a generic front-end build setup or web tooling build setup. It uses ES modules native. It's super fast. There's Vue plugin, which was the original, but now there's a React plugin and various other things. So it's a very cool new project, and I'm shouting it out because he could have just made this particularly for Vue, but he ended up generalizing it and making it available for everyone. So like the Chrome improvements, it's improving the web for everyone.
Awesome. Last but not least, Matt, shout out.
Yes, I found this great project. There's a person doing some great work on left padding strings. So it's called left pad. And basically, if you need a string to be look like it's over on the right, I remember that because that's counterintuitive. You're padding on the left. That's important. You don't have to write that yourself now. And so you're going to save a lot of time for a lot of us. I think we should all pop that in the old dependency tree. No probs.
You Go developers are on the bleeding edge.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was either going to do that one. I haven't been really keeping up with it. There's another one called jQuery, which I thought was quite interesting. Interesting little project, but maybe we'll do that one next time.
Well, you assume too much, Matt, because you're never coming back. Says the dictator. Yeah. But we appreciate you being here this time because we needed some royalty-free music. And so now that we've got what we want out of you, we will see you on Go Time. Of course.
I just want to say I'm not royalty free. I still have a monarch in the UK, unfortunately. Yeah. So I don't want to get into that, but yeah. You sorted it out, didn't you, ages ago?
We can chat about it on Clubhouse.
Yeah, we have our own problems now.
Yeah, different. Yeah. Sorry.
How do we end the show? Thanks for coming on the show, Matt. Nick, thanks for always being here. And K-Ball, appreciate you. That's JS Party. Getting real sentimental here. Let me just have a half-second pause so I can cut this part out. That's JS Party for this week. We'll talk to you next time. Oh no, that's the Go Time outro. What am I doing?
Oh.
Say goodbye, everyone.
Don't let your smiles go stale. If you have to hold a smile